Hello and Merry Christmas. As we have been drawing nearer to December 25th, it's nearly impossible to ignore the many things that evoke Christmas Day and in general the Christmas spirit. It's the atmosphere that we can feel with all of our senses. It's the weather changing, the decorations going up, the family and friends in town, the time off work, the baking of cookies. It's the music, and maybe even hearing the church bells. All of these things and many more, when they are experienced and felt, they positively affect our hearts and our spirits. It leads us to peace and to goodwill. Ultimately, it draws us closer to Jesus as he is the Christ in Christmas. But what happens when all of those not so little things are taken away or they're forced to be done in private? For the people of Romania in 1989, they had. What happened to peace and goodwill, and how was Christmas restored? Episode 25, The Return of the Christmas Bells, starts now.
Just a year ago, you welcomed me to Bucharest as the first American president ever to visit Romania. Today, I'm very honored to welcome you to Washington, D.C. as the first president of Romania ever to visit the United States of America.
While the coming of December once evoked warm sentiments for the upcoming celebration of the birth of Christ, it had been overshadowed by the harsh weather that was only going to get colder. One of the season's jokes was that Dante had been wrong, and that hell was not hot at all. It was, in fact, as cold as a Romanian apartment in winter. But even if the apartments were warm, Christmas was not celebrated. And even though 90% of Romanians belong to the Christian Orthodox faith, church bells did not ring. By the 1980s, the most celebrated day in Romania was no longer the birth of Jesus the Christ, but under compulsion, the birth of its dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, who was aptly nicknamed the Antichrist.
Președintele Republicii, tovarășul Nicolae Ceausescu.
And as 1989 was coming to a close in mid-December, as we all know now, the people of Romania were unknowingly on the brink of not only openly celebrating the birth of their Christ, but the death of their Antichrist.
There were pieces of intelligence information that I saw, and thus George Bush and Ronald Reagan and other American presidents had access to, that he is closely collaborating with Moscow, that he is killing pastors and priests and destroying churches, and jailing into a vast gulag of slave labor, political and religious dissidents.
But what many people don't know was that this Romanian Revolution all started by the humble but powerful convictions of a Hungarian pastor named Laszlo Tokes. Only Romanians 45 years and older could remember the sweet sounds of church bells ringing, for under Nicolae Ceausescu's Romanian Communist Party, they were no more. Romania had been in the grips of communism for some time, but by the 1980s it had become intolerable. Despite the country being very fertile, like most communist countries, food was scarce and people were starving. Most of the nation's raw materials were being exported to foreign creditors to pay off debts that Nicolae had accumulated. Because of this debt, Nicolae's aim was to strengthen the workforce, causing Romania to reach a population of 100 million. To do so, he outlawed abortion and contraceptives. In the massive block apartments that housed the growing nation, hot water was only available one day of the week, and the electricity only worked when the government wanted it to. Every winter, hundreds of people froze to death in their apartment or died from asphyxiation as gas stoves were shut off, only to then be turned back on without warning, filling sleeping apartments with gas. Meanwhile, the secret police, the Securitate, had made Romania into a police state. It is believed that 1 in 4 citizens would alert the Securitate of anyone suspected of being unloyal to the government. Actions, speech, and even opinions that did not approve of Nicolae were strictly forbidden. Because of the overwhelming numbers of the police state, organizing dissent was nearly impossible, and even by Soviet bloc standards, the Securitate was exceptionally brutal. But on December 16th, in the western city of Timisoara, a public protest was being held in response to the government's crackdown against the Reformed Church pastor Laszlo Tokes. He had been critical of Nicolae's government, mainly that the people of Romania not only could not exercise their God-given rights, but did not even know what they were. The Romanian Communist Party charged the pastor with enticing ethnic hatred and sought to have him forcibly removed. But his parishioners, who just 2 years before only numbered a few dozen, had now grown to nearly 5,000, protected their pastor and his pregnant wife Edith by surrounding their church with a human shield. Tokes knew of the plan for his capture, so he encouraged his church a few days beforehand, stating, "I have been issued a summons of eviction. I will not accept it, so I will be taken from you by force. They want to do this in the secret because they have no right to do it. Please, come and be witnesses of what will happen. Come, be peaceful, but be witnesses." And the church came in numbers, so much that their collective resistance rendered the Securitate unable to remove the pastor. And as the hours passed into nightfall, more and more people from other churches joined the protest into the next day. By now, many other supportive spectators had joined the cause and began to take their message further. Within a day, the demonstration for the pastor sparked a protest in the city. And within a few more days, the protest in the city would in turn spark a wildfire of dissent among a brutalized nation. Pro-Romanian chants and songs that had been long outlawed broke out among the people. The crowd grew so large and cantankerous around the church that a large portion decided to take their protest to the central square of Timisoara. This was when the Securitate made their move. In the pre-dawn hours of December 17th, the secret police burst through the crowd, broke the church door, and captured Tokes and his wife. Just as fast as they had came, the secret police then disappeared into the darkness from where they emerged. But as the sun began to rise, the public outcry was only beginning. By early morning, the central square of Timisoara was filled with protesters, confronting the Securitate with candles of unity and songs proclaiming freedom. But other objectors were not so peaceful. Having heard the uprising was becoming too much for the local police, the military was called in with armored carriers and tanks. At the command of Nicolae's wife, Elena, the military then opened fire into the protesters, killing men, women, and children. By the next few days, the uprising in Timisoara was nearly squashed by military force. But the cries for freedom and justice from those who had perished had been heard throughout the whole nation. Having been in Iran, Nicolae quickly returned to his palace in Bucharest on the evening of December 20th to publicly condemn the unrest in Timisoara the following morning. Nicolae addressed a gathering of approximately 100,000 people, packed upon the doorsteps of his nearly 4 million square foot palace on December 21st, but it was too late.
Populare din București, considerând aceasta ca o.
In the middle of his speech, which praised his communist country and condemned the protesters at Timisoara as being fascist, panic broke out among the crowd. It was the first time that Nicolae had ever been booed by a crowd. and it would be his last. There was 3.5 minutes of confusion that interrupted the speech as the camera stopped visually recording. Whatever the mysterious disturbance was, it clearly signaled the end of Nicolae's reign. Confusion and violent protest continued throughout the night in Bucharest. The House of the Republic was being overrun. Around noon on December 22nd, Nicolae, his wife, and 4 others were rushed into a helicopter and extracted from their stately home. As a revolution was evident and now unstoppable, the military soon defected. The Ceausescus were forced to land and were arrested only 3.5 hours later. While all of this was taking place, a new government council was being formed and a military tribunal placed the couple in court-martial. They were charged with the genocide of 60,000 Romanians and other fiscal crimes. The trial, which was largely a spectacle, was held on December 25th. It lasted for about 2 hours and delivered death sentences to the dictator and his wife. Because the Ceausescus didn't recognize the court's authority, they declined to have any legal aid.
And we decided to shoot them, but first we had to judge them. In my opinion, this judgment wasn't necessary, but for the general impression, we had to do it.
Throughout the trial, Nicolae kept looking at his wristwatch, as if waiting to be rescued. It never came. From the makeshift courtroom, the couple was then handcuffed and shuffled outside. Nicolae was complacent while Elena was quite bitter and kept commanding the guards to be gentle with her, lest they break her wrist.
To the end, when they were tying their hands, he was very calm. But she said to the people trying to tie her hands to be careful with her hands because it could be broken. It doesn't matter if they are broken or not when you are going to die in 5 minutes, huh?
While many military personnel offered to execute them, only 3 paratroopers were selected. With their service rifles in hand, the 3 opened fire on the elderly couple just outside the courtroom. 19 bullets were fired in total. Although the trial and executed bodies were televised, the actual execution was not caught on camera since the paratroopers didn't wait for the command to shoot, causing the cameraman to miss the moment. By midday on December 25th, the Antichrist and his wife were dead. And for the first time in 40 years, the streets of Romania were filled with people crying in sincere celebration. Makeshift Christmas trees were being erected, and throughout the country a familiar carol played, as the church bells were once again ringing. But now they pealed more loud and deep, as if to say, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. Pastor Tokes and his wife were soon released from where they were taken. Laszlo would go on to serve in the Reformed Church and extend his influence within Romania's European Parliament. He received numerous awards and was even honored in Washington, D.C. in 2009, being awarded the Truman Reagan Medal of Freedom for his role in helping to overthrow Romanian communism. He is 69 years old and continues to live in Romania today. In the immediate wake of the revolution, a large bronze statue of a Soviet soldier that domineered a public square was taken down, melted, and recast into church bells. And their continued sound has inspired more to be cast even today. In just 2017, Romania's Redemption Cathedral dedicated one of the biggest church bells in the world, weighing in at 25 tons. Half of Bucharest's nearly 2 million free citizens can hear it when rung. And hearing church bells when they ring is much more than just something we sense with our ears, but it's something that we can sense and we can comprehend within our hearts. It was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in 1863 that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow heard the church bells ring on Christmas. Hearing them stirred his depressed heart and revived a belief in a promise that he had stopped believing. He put pen to paper and wrote the now famous poem, Christmas Bells. He authored it in an extremely painful time of his life and the nation's, as it was in the very middle of a bloody civil war. The war, mixed with personal loss, made the grace and love of God hard to see. Although it was written 126 years before the Romanian Revolution, it was and remains an appropriate message that even in the darkest hours God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. For at the very heart of Longfellow's poem, and the reason I believe it endures today, is the angelic promise that with the arrival of Jesus, God in the flesh, true peace on earth and goodwill towards men can be had. And this message was made for all mankind and for all times. So if we want peace on earth and goodwill extended to all people, Christ must no longer lay in a manger within our minds, but sit upon the throne of our hearts. That's my prayer for you, and that's my prayer for myself, and I hope you have a great and Merry Christmas.
In despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Peace on earth, peace on earth, peace on loud and deep. God is not dead, nor does he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, but most importantly, share this episode with a friend. Also, in my notes, there will be a link to the beautiful rendition of Christmas Bells performed by my friends Cameron and Carly. Please check them out and spread the cheer. See you next time.